Ha, I'm going to mute you during the intro. This is Charles.
This is Emmanuel.
And you are listening to
Blight Makes Right.
The original Legion of Everblight podcast.
The original.
Fire breath and shit.
I love that dragon. I'm not gonna lie, we were recording, doing some pre-recording, testing our equipment. Dragon woke me up. I was like, oh, what is that?
Been a long day. You're in Central Time right now.
I am. This week.
All right. Well, as we were talking about before the show, rather than just do like a list conversation every episode, we wanted to break off and also do some more in-depth strategy conversation for Legion players to keep in mind. And earlier this week, because I've decided to be douchey on the internet, I've started making Legion memes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Emmanuel, which is your favorite of my memes so far? Did you like the...
Oh, definitely the Kruger 2 meme.
Okay, you're about the Justice League meme?
All day.
Okay. So after I posted it, somebody had commented that they're like, oh, well, clearly, if this is what you're doing, your plan is assassination. And I was like, whoa. Okay, let's back up a step. My plan is never assassination.
Bingo.
My plan is to threaten assassination. I like playing the game a whole lot better when my opponents are scared for their life. I hate playing the game when people just feel like they can spend all their focus and they can do whatever they want. They can TK shit all over the place with no fear of reprisal. That's the game I don't want to play, because that's where there's a lot of warlocks and warcasters that get just stupid powerful if they're not, if their spidey senses aren't tingling, there's a problem. And so,
I agree.
That's kind of what we're going to talk about in this particular episode, is what it means to threaten the assassination, even if that isn't your first goal. So, Emmanuel, just off the bat, with the casters that you're playing, what have been some assassination threats that you want to make sure that your opponent is aware of and playing around?
Well, I mean, that meme was based around Callus, right? And we even talked about that, I think, in our very first episode, Callus 2, where you're like, let me put out my threat bubble, just so you're aware that if you step into it, you may die. And I think that's really important to be able to have that in your tool bag, even if you never use it.
Right. And that's one of the things we're talking about. So take Callus 2. Part of why I was considering Callus 2 as a play into Kruger 2 was the fact that even if you have the feat, right? And he's like, I push all your shit back 2 inches, right? And now, or push you back 3 inches, and then you get -2 speed, right? That's the numbers. Okay. So from there, you got to, okay, so Golab's down to 5 speed, right? Not fantastic. But if Kruger caught him, let's just say that Kruger barely caught him in the feet. He's just that nut hair within the feet. And he pushes him back 3 inches, and you get all 3 inches of movement. So now Golab's 17 inches away from Kruger. So Overrun pushes him forward 5. And at that point, he's now 12 inches away from Kruger. So the normal charge threat is going to be 9. So you need 3 more. The feat does that. And so if you can catch Kruger on fire, it puts you in a situation to say, Carnivian spray, right? Something like that. Or you pop his brand of fire, right? And you hit something that's near Kruger. There's lots of low defense things near Kruger. So these things are totally possible to do. And then so suddenly it's not possible to hit Golab with the feat without potentially threatening the assassination. And that's we're talking max distance there. That's the absolute best case scenario for the Kruger 2 player. If Golab is a little further back, his threat range is actually way bigger. If Kruger tries to feat and misses Golab by 1 inch, you don't even need the feat.
Definitely.
Yeah. So when if he's like 15 inches away. So that's one of the things to keep in mind. And then what that does, even if you never have to do it, suddenly Kruger's thinking about having to camp more, which means he can't TK stuff as much. Which means he's gotta be managing his spells more carefully. He has to potentially not use his models as threateningly because he needs them positioned in front of Kruger. And then to kind of hit on the flip side of it, one of the things that I've been realizing with Callus 1 is honestly, my games are so ridiculously lopsided that I need to start realizing after the feat turn, I need to use more models to block line of sight to Callus, which was not something I had to do a whole lot back in Mark II when you're playing 8 Fury Warlocks, where distance is the thing. You're just like, I'm just so far away from you, it doesn't matter. But Callus is up there. He's trying to catch people in Dark Guidance. And I'm realizing one of the things that I'm going to have to do is pick that turn where I'm not going all out and not cast Dark Guidance, or at least make sure that I'm camping 2 and not upkeeping Ignite and putting additional models in front of Callus, because I'm finding every game now, some games is just like, I go up 3 points on scenario, they get no points, I win on scenario the next turn. So there was never really a rebuttal where it wasn't including my feat. But when that doesn't happen and I have a full turn that I'm going to have to play through after my feat, I need to be more defensive on that turn, because even though none of the assassinations have been good, they've been possible. And I need to get them to 0 or like sub 10, right? Like as close to impossible as possible. So with your current, because you've been playing Animag, right?
Mm-hmm. Lots of Animag.
Have you been wanting to scare people with the Gallows?
No, this is actually probably an area in which my tactical acumen helps me out a lot, and I don't necessarily plan directly around it. But with being a heavy attrition style player, where I'm like, okay, I'm going to go in there, I'm going to hold as much ground as possible, I'm going to give you as little as possible, and I'm going to get as far up on points as possible. You're right, it will put your opponent on the back, either win or lose by assassination, right? And so for me, I do a lot of that through board position. I think that especially with the house or the forest or building or whatever they put in the middle of the table, you need to be able to threaten that zone, because a lot of times when a caster is going to come up and they're going to use the full contingent of everything and feel safe, they're going to do it where they can feel like, okay, I have a piece of terrain to shield me, I can get the most effect out of this area, and you're seeing it out of offensive and defensive casters. And so my move has been to rush the center of the table. It reminds me a lot of playing chess with like knights, for example. And so some of your first moves are to kind of dominate the center of the table and hold that ground and say, now I've projected threat in this area. Do you want to move into it? And so this game kind of plays similarly. If you let your opponent make it to the center first, especially with their caster, and you're not threatening it, they're going to be in a really good board position. So sometimes just being in the proper board position is enough to threaten the caster to be a little further back.
Oh, for sure. And there are some casters who project their threat more naturally than others do. I think Veil 2 is a really good example of that. The ability to put out 3 to 4 spells scares the shit out of a lot of casters. And she doesn't really have to be anywhere to do that, because she can shoot a tentacle in the back. She can shoot whatever and start flinging spells. And so the only time with, say, a caster like that, you need to think about it as like, well, if I need to see through a cloud, I need to make sure there's a beast that I can potentially, something that's got Eye of Sight that's going to be able to see through that cloud to hit them. Additionally, keep in mind with the way that line of sight rules work, even if the beast is in the cloud, or like say you're shooting a throne, right, and it doesn't have Eye of Sight, if the throne's in the cloud and it's getting negative to attack, doesn't matter. She's the one making the attack roll. So there's a lot of things to keep in mind there, that not all casters do you have to do something special. But I suppose it's probably easier to think about some of this assassination threat from the perspective of the way you threaten zones, right? Like to a certain extent, you need to kind of come into the zone, or at least get close enough that you threaten the other side of the zone to kill things that can potentially go in there and contest or potentially control. So Chosen, it's really easy. You got 12 inches of base threat. So if they're towing into the zone anywhere, they're threatening the things on the other side of the zone. And I think that's one of the things that works to Legion's benefit. With a lot of our speed, we just almost always threaten that really naturally. I mean, a Nerf needs to be 1 inch usually inside a zone to be able to threaten the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Chosen, if they're in the zone, they pretty much threaten the other parts of the zone. But now we do
Well,
have,
to be fair, you don't necessarily have to be in an inch because you can pull things in if you really want to get
yes.
frisky.
I've been like keeping an eye on a tractor a lot because I've been playing the shit out of Nerfs. But I will admit I have not actually used a tractor that a lot of time when I look at it, it hasn't been perfectly optimal, but it is definitely something to keep in mind because it can totally change a game. And it was even almost more important for me sometimes when I was playing with the Blightbringer, because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you just want to pull something so it's out of the Blightbringer's way so it can land in a more optimal spot.
Yep, it's true. It's interesting that you run two Nerfs too, because two Nerfs are really good at clearing line of sight because they can go on opposite sides of an individual like screening model or a couple screening models and pull
Yeah.
them apart and create a lane for you. So I always found sometimes the repositioning is better for other models later on that you want to set up, and not necessarily the Nerf that you're trying to deliver.
Right. And there are times where I specifically set up the Nerfs with a plan where GoLab is a little further back because I don't want to lose GoLab too early,
Hmm.
but I don't really care if I lose a Nerf. If someone focus fires down a Nerf, it's like, whatever. It's just another. I mean, really, the Nerf is the same amount of points as my Rot Wings, right? They will do some work, but I expect some of it to just absorb shots, and that's fine. Um, but if you threaten with the Nerf and you have the Nerf up a little bit more aggressively, you can have the Nerf go up and just like murder something that it's going to trigger sprint off of, and then you pull the key target forward with a tractor, and then it sprints away, and Golub's like, "Oh, you weren't thinking that you were in my threat range, but you were."
Yeah, little mini threat range extenders is cute. I remember back in Mark II when you used to do that with Angelius and Refuge, where you'd like refuge over the top of somebody and bounce them backwards towards your army.
Oh yeah, I've done that, but it's too bad. No refuge tricks at the end of
I know.
your no repulse tricks at the end of your refuging anymore. But I think in general, part of why the assassination threat is so important is if you're out of position, you can often like if you're going into your turn and you're just like, oh man, if this model had just been here, then I would just kill you. And that's the sort of thing that you need to be thinking about the turn before, because honestly, your opponent probably realized that. And
Hmm.
they're like, oh, well, I'm safe to go up because that spell martyr's too far back, or something to that effect. Where it's just you just don't want to let people go all out against you because we're a fragile faction. Like even when we're durable, we're still like when we're like this is our most durable. We're not like K durable, like right. We're still Legion durable.
Yeah.
So it's important, I think, when you're trying to play Legion as a faction, to be managing that and just be like, try to keep people in check. Don't play for the threat. So are you thinking Animag Callus 2? Is that kind of where you're going with these things?
No. Well, right now, I'm not really sure what my second list is going to be, but I haven't got to play a chance to play against Callus 2 just because of the amount of Crucible Guard I've been crashing into lately. But I think that my second list is probably going to be something that is more attrition favored and less. I know that Animag's already an attrition list, but she's kind of the sledgehammer of the two lists. She's going to be the one to go in and pound a brick into the dirt. And so I've been looking at like Saren 1. I know she got voted into our bottom four casters, and I'm like, but I can make Carnivian's Arm 23. How is that bad? So I'm not sure what it's going to be yet, but that second list is probably going to be even harder to crack than Animag.
Okay, well, since you brought it up, we should have some fun with the listeners. Emmanuel, what do you think are the bottom four Legion casters?
Well, Bethane got voted in there, and I think that's kind of a rightful place for her. She's got interesting tech, but her kit it's not great. And the minimal War Beast points in Legion really hurts.
Yeah.
Um,
Honestly, that's the only thing I think puts her in there. Like, I actually think her spell list is great. Like, she's got a really interesting spell list. And I would be all about trying her, but just like building lists to try to build to her variety package Like, I just don't think she has the War Beast points to pull it off.
Yeah, she's got a weird variety package, and then she's got a feat that emphasizes that even more, and you're just like, I'm not sure how to fit all this in. I would probably go, and like maybe I'm a bit biased, but I think the casters that have the least amount of options tend to be in this list for me. Who do you think is in there? Because Bethane we both agree on. Who's your number 2?
Oh, geez. I remember when I was looking through the full list, like it was pretty readily apparent who all belongs down there. I don't even have the list in front of me. But honestly, like Saren is, I don't know. Saren's got some game, but she still probably falls into the bottom 4. All right, I'm gonna pull up War Room real quick. I need to see this in front of me. I need to see the list.
Well, for me,
the top 4 is easy. Like I feel like the top 4 is not even a problem.
I think, and maybe I'm just biased against it, but I don't like Veil 1 at all in Mark 2. I used to play her a lot, and I look at her kit, I look at the meta, I look at where the game is, and I'm just like, I would put her in the bottom. Yeah, and it's weird to think an 8 Fury Warlock with Insight should be on the bottom, but
so it's funny we're gonna say this. Actually, they just started mentioning it in the chat. Krissa was the one I was thinking of. I would put Krissa probably.
Yeah.
Krissa and Bethane are like hanging out at the bottom, like having their slum party. But True. What Krissa has going for her, at least her feet's solid. She can at least generally build the list that she wants. She just doesn't support it well enough. Like, I like the fact that she's got 31 War Beast points, and it wouldn't take that much to push Krissa up. Like if we got like a full CID that was going to look at things in more detail, but they want to make minimal changes to her because she is a battle box caster, like changing quickness to quicken, and suddenly I'm like actively looking at this caster like, well, okay then. Like, yeah, I don't think it would take that much because she's got good War Beast points, she's got a decent feat.
She just needs to do a little bit more.
I could definitely see her having game.
She's in a weird spot. She tries to emphasize her own personal threat in a way that we have so many casters that just do it so much better and support their armies.
Yeah, it almost looked like she was designed to have Weapon Master or something. Where you're like, I feel like she's supposed to like really scare people, but she doesn't.
Yeah. Wild Wing Zero says, I'd say Bethane, Lilith 2, Saren for sure. I'm kind of split on the Veils and Krissa.
I mean, I think that's totally fair. I mean, in a lot.
How do you feel about Lilith 2?
I have mixed feelings on her. I've been building some lists with her because I still feel like it can be potentially interesting. And she's got great synergy with the Blightbringer, right? Being able to like drop 2 Blightbringer AoEs, like there may still be a list for her. But honestly, I feel kind of the same way about Veil 1, where she's got to be playing a bit more defensive, but that doesn't mean her spell list isn't baller good, right? Like, and now the fact, like, part of me wants to make a Primal Terrors list or something with her because she can crank up the power of all the troops. Problem is, she doesn't really help deliver them. And so it's not like playing Callus, but she can get up there and she can do some good work. But it may almost be that where you need to play her almost like ranged, where maybe she's going to play War Spears or something, where you're going to like try to do a bunch of work at range and to a certain extent force them into you, where then you get insight without overexposing Veil. Or maybe she's just going to cast insight in camp 4.
Yeah.
Obviously Chiller, still a solid spell, but depending on what she's running, she just may not need the extra accuracy. But man, removing around like a whole army of troops, no questions asked, that's pretty good. We've got a lot of fast stuff, like charging in Chosen and then getting them to walk them back 7 inches, no free strikes. Like if they kill the front line, they can potentially like reposition back 3 and then move back 10. They're moving back as far as they charged.
Reposition 3, then move back 7 for a total of 10.
Right, that's what I mean. Yeah, they reposition 3, then they walk back their speed. Yeah, glad you keep me in check. But I think one of the things that when we look at the top casters that we're playing and the ones that we're looking at, it's about threatening assassination in a lot of cases. Like sometimes that's the thing that actually pushes them up. Not probably so much Callus. Like, even though he's probably our top caster at the moment, he doesn't actually threaten assassination as much as some of the other ones that we're looking at. Maybe Thagrosh 1 also to a lesser degree. Again,
Mhm.
not really threatening a huge assassination. But a lot of the other casters that people are bringing up, I think Animag has really potential scary threat. Like Gallows is just
Definitely.
scary. And Ayana threatens it. Lilith 3 threatens it. Veil 2 threatens it. Um, Lilith 1 has seen a little spike in play. I think she threatens the assassination too. So all of these are interesting. And both of the Absolonias get a decent amount of play. And I think both of them can be scary for a lot of lists. So you want to keep those in mind. So what were your last games at this point, Emmanuel? Who were the last casters you were playing?
My last two games were Callus 1 and Animag,
Okay.
and both in Primal Terrors.
So obviously, as I was saying, I don't think Callus threatens it quite as much as some of the other lists.
Hmm.
Did you feel like your opponent was actually scared of you? Like, do you feel like they were concerned about their caster stats? Were they ever like grabbing the caster and like, I need to move back just a little bit. I can't go quite that far, or being concerned about their stack? Like, how threatened do you think they were?
Well, in my last game, I played against Zal 2 in the Exalted tier, and I can't pull him, so it was basically zero. But
Okay.
I will say that the way I stacked up in that game and the way you can kind of blow through certain parts of it if you really get like 2 units of Chosen dedicated to one side of the table, he did have to reposition where he's like, and I am no longer safe over here. And that's my threatening board position, is to go, your caster just can't come this direction now. So he's not going to support this side of the table.
Okay. So let's move past assassination threats for a bit. One of the other things that I've been noticing is very important is redundant control of especially flags. So let's say Callus again, big topic for Legion players. One of the things I noticed that I was doing was uh, on feat turn, for example, I move up a solo, or move up something onto a flag, like say a spell martyr, as opposed to the feral geist during the feat turn. And so if somebody is going, well, I just can't get to his flag, so I'm just going to use one of my shots to
Hmm.
kill the guy who's on the flag to deny him that point. And then they're like, boom, I should kill your spell martyr. I'm like, okay, I put an incubi, still a solo, still going to control that flag. And people are like, damn, I didn't think about that. They're forgetting that the incubis are solos. It's just they're thinking about it kind of like a unit. And I
Hmm.
think that's the same reason why JVM plays Gudrun in his Callus list. And I think Gudrun is potentially something that more lists should be looking at when you can fit him in, because he's somebody like, I'm going to kill him so that I can get you to stop scoring those points. And then he just heals to full, and then you can't shoot him again because he's got feigned death. And so I think that is something that we need to look at, because honestly, I feel like we've moved into a game where scenario is more important than attrition. To a certain extent, you're always playing attrition, but there are more games going to round 7, and there are games where your ability to even play for attrition just gets shut down once you are behind on scenario, then becomes all about just stopping your opponent from gradually getting more points than you. So, has there been anything that you have noticed where you are trying to manipulate that and kind of reinforce your ability to control zones or control flags?
Definitely. I would say that's probably been one of my biggest adjustments of Mark III, is coming in and kind of learning to shape myself around the scenario and how important it is. And I've had a lot of games that never made it to turn 7 because I had a really hardy attrition list that got out scenarioed. And then I'm like, well, my game plan went out and your game plan stomped mine because I wasn't prepared for this scenario. And so I've had to go back and kind of not only rethink about how I build my list, but how I apply myself over the turns, how I can control, but sometimes I need to contest, keep I noticed very early I was wanting to throw my solos onto flags, and then I would lose them and have no scoring potential in the end game for some of the things. And so I found myself keeping an extra spell martyr back, or maybe holding the feral geist off until I know I can score it consistently. Because committing too early to scenario has been a struggle for me as an attrition player, because you want to commit, you want your opponent to get locked into it and then lose that fight and never score. And the different scoring elements has changed the way that the battlefield develops.
I think for anyone who is playing in Mark II, there is probably, to a certain extent, you look at some of the scenarios and you look at that as long as you're scoring, you're continuing to delay the game. But there is to a certain extent, the scenarios feel more live than they ever did before. Yes,
Agreed.
there were certain situations where you would see people, they were just like, it doesn't matter what you do, they score 2 points and they score one more and they win and the game's over. And some of that is gone, right? Where, there's not quite that. But there is still the concern that as soon as you go down, like 2 points is not the worst. But as soon as you're down 3 points, it is a huge amount of pressure. And there's often in that situation, there's at least one flag that they're probably going to continue scoring, or there's a back zone or something that they're going to continue scoring. And as soon as you've lost that momentum, it is really hard to get it back. And so that's one of the things that I've been noticing. And there was a point where I was playing Callus in the last tournament, and I put 4 solos on a flag where I was just like, Amlek's going to be on this flag. There's going to be a Feral Geist. There's going to be a couple of Incubi. Like, I'm going to make sure that I continue to score this and try to make it as difficult as possible. Because sometimes when you have someone digging deep and they're trying to find a way to slow you down, sometimes that is, I just got to roll this attack roll. I just got to roll this one shot and get somebody off this flag. And so you really, really have to be careful of that sort of thing. And vice versa, I was thinking about my loss 2 tournaments ago, and I got really aggressive with my Archangel. And I was thinking back, I was replaying the game in my head, and I was like, what should I have done? And it didn't seem like much. But now when I go back in that particular scenario, the Blightbringer should have just killed a Sentry Stone. Doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but because I was scaring Kruger enough, he didn't really have his Windstorm affecting enough of the board to stop me from shooting down a Sentry Stone. And if I focus fire down his Sentry Stones, he can't control the zones without putting Kruger in harm's way. And I think that's one of the things that I've struggled with list building, where I always think about how can things go wrong. And when I'm like, I have 1 unit, and I'm like, this thing's just going to die to any smart opponent who's going to try to deny me my ability to score. And yeah, sure, maybe if you're running Feral Valkyries, right? Like maybe 1 Tufts or something. But I don't know. When I look at some of the beast heavy or jack heavy theme forces, and like how few units they have, like I think depriving somebody of their units in a lot of certain scenarios can really tilt that in your favor. And so, I mean, Sentry Stones are a great example of a really durable unit that like regenerates itself, kind of like the Hellmouth, and which is why I think they're so great. The fact that Circle gets it in Bones is fantastic, because then they can run really beast and battle engine heavy, and then they've got their 2 best, most cost-effective units like there to control these zones and being able to bring 2 of them. And so that's something that I've been trying to bring to some of my other lists and going, can I play beast heavy in Primal Terrors or Ravens and still bring in Hellmouse to try to like amplify my scenario threat? Is that something that's been crossing your mind as well?
Definitely. We were recently on Blightbringers, and they sold me hard on Feral Valkyries, and I was like, So I went back to the drawing board.
You mean Cutter sold you hard on Feral Valkyries?
Sure, right? You're right. Cutter totally sold me on them. We had some good after
stock in those models.
I think he does too. We had some good after cast discussion over his list and stuff too, and so I kind of went back to the board and I thought, okay, I've had these core Legion lists for a long time, and now let's see if I can kind of break it down. And as I'm starting to play with the pieces a little bit more, as I know that I'm not going to reach that 3rd free model in whichever tier I'm going with, I've just kind of assumed, okay, well, now I have more freedom to play with that extra span of points that I'm not investing to buy my 3rd model. And Primal Terrors is a good example where it's like, that could be another heavy. That could be a light and a few solos, and that is something that list can be really light on in general. So, and I'm starting to pull a bit of old Omnis in that I'm obsessed with rakes. Like, I know that they're not OP as they could have been, but stealth seems to be a little bit harder to come by. We don't just have Shadow Pack on the stick anymore.
No, for sure. Like, and stealth has gotten more powerful. Like, there are, I mean, to a certain extent, Eyeless Sight on a stick is being handed out, but there is not nearly as much things. It still feels like there's not as many things with stealth, and thus there's a lot less things that can actually attack things with stealth.
Definitely. And for 8 points, all the things that you get within the rake, and talk about threatening the assassination, it's a good tool to be like, okay, he's going to be my scoring piece for a majority of the game. But late game, when you don't have all the things to buff anymore, and you're like, maybe I give my rake +2 strength and he just kills your caster because you walk too close. Or I just keep walking my rake closer to you, and now that you don't have an answer for my defense 15 rake, I'm going to get you eventually.
Right, and I still like the rakes. I think they're a little over. I want to.
I need a second one. I need like 4 of them really, so I can I have a few Thagrosh lists that I want to run like rake spam with, but I need at least 2. I think they make a really good hunting pack.
Yeah, a lot of the time I feel like if you want to run one, you almost kind of need 2. Where they're almost like a 16-point package, and I'd feel a lot better about them if they were a 14-point package.
I agree on both.
Yeah, but it's been interesting. So, well, while we were on this topic, has there been any other models that you feel like have really jumped out at you in Mark III, where you're like, this has my attention, like I want to use this?
Definitely. I would say the one that made me stand up and take notice the most was the Carnivean. I really wanted the Carnivean to be good in Mark II, and it just wasn't where it needed to be. And now, with the 1 cost +2 Arm Animus, and it's just a better piece now, I have even made a couple lists where I'm like, 3 Carniveans isn't a bad battle group.
Yeah, they're definitely, like, with Spiny Growth only costing 1, with them being Rat 5 now, there's a lot of things to like about the Carnivean. For me, I will admit, like, one of my favorite things, like, Golab is like right up here at the top. Like, Golab's like my number 1. Golab's my baby. Number 2, I am so in love with Warmongers. I was really disappointed with seeing them go down to 5 boxes, right, and lose a mat. I was like, oh, ow, that hurts so bad. Like, I hate losing accuracy. But with that said, the having access to Vengeance in the Theme Force, man, extending their threat range. Having access to the mini feat. Well, it's really Gorag that does it.
Yes.
Right? Like, I like Warmongers. I fucking love Gorag. Like, there are so many things. The fact that all these casters were like, man, this caster would just be better if it had like a mat fixer. And that's kind of their one weak spot. And Gorag's like, I'm here for you, buddy.
Got your blighted back.
Right. And there's just so many things where it fixes situations. Like, let's say Callus 2, for instance. You're like, well, he doesn't have a mat fixer. Like, how effective is his assassination run going to be? Like, if you have to boost a hit every shot and you're still not super likely to hit all of them, but when you can switch like needing an 8 to hit Kruger down to needing a 6 because Gorag just runs up and is like, look into my eyes. Right? Like, I love Gorag, and I think he brings so many things to so many casters, like Thagrosh 1, for instance, who just is like, I'm fantastic, I just don't fix mat. And that's a really big deal, and I'm really excited to get in more games with Thagrosh, because concealment, tilting things just a little bit, giving him access to a mat fixer really readily, and kind of the same thing with the Hex Hunters. Like,
wait. Before we go on to Gorag, I still want to talk about him a little bit.
Okay, talk away.
So, it was actually your Callus list that convinced me to play Gorag with Callus. Because after my last game with him, I really felt that he gets put in this position where there are a lot of things in the game that he wants to cast Dark Guidance for, and it just gets him in a really killy position. He has to be that close to the front line. He has to spend a good stack, and typically that's the turn you want to commit a lot of things, so there aren't a lot of things to hang back with him. And so I'm looking at your list and I'm like, you can give a -3 defense swing without needing Dark Guidance. And then suddenly, maybe I cast Ignite this turn, Gorag walks up, I put a Rotwing next to you, and I don't need to cast Dark Guidance. And so I agree. I think that he kind of pushed it over into a new excitement range for me as well.
Well, I'm also really digging the things that kind of help you with your order of activation issues.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you want to activate something that needs to use Ignite maybe before you switch it over to something else, but you're really concerned about like the accuracy for them. Maybe you want to cast Dark Guidance. But it's really nice having access to Vengeance on Gorag, because sometimes you can actually like Vengeance him into the position that you want to like Paralyzing Gaze something for your Nerf or Typhon or whatever to go murder. And then he can still charge something else later on and hand out Paralyzing Gaze
In a different
spot.
Yeah.
And I also like doing that sort of things with Golab, like the ability to like, especially with Thagrosh, right? Because you can bring Golab back. Having him go up, murder some stuff, and instead of sprinting to safety, have him sprint to, I'm going to screw over this totally different area that is now going to get RFP'd and ignore tough. And so I really like what Golab and like the reposition on so many things and the Vengeance thing. Like, I always like Legion's ability to manipulate the table and change where things are going to be, and not necessarily nearly as much on your opponent's models, but it's just, it really, Legion is a guerrilla tactics faction, and I feel like it's been that way for a long time. And I feel like some of the recent changes has really helped push Legion back into that position and doing it in lots of interesting ways. And that was one of the things, like, remember when Veil 2 first came out in Mark 2 and everyone's, was like, well, doesn't Veil 1 just do this better? And then when you realize, we're like, well, you don't get to hit everybody with your whole army all the time. She kind of gets to use Veil 1's feet like every turn. Like, this angel refuges, maybe she refuges too. Like, there was so much movement shenanigans. And when you can do that every turn, it has a huge impact. And our ability to access sprint now and to access reposition, I'm loving it. So I was gonna say, like, Hex Hunters having ready access to Shadowbind, not just on Veil, is another way that we've been able to hand out and kind of like fix for some of the casters. And this is something, it's interesting because for a lot of factions, I feel like a lot of the time it's a beast animi that is fixing some of these random issues for various warlocks, but we don't have like a primal or something like that. And so a lot of these spells haven't felt as strong in Legion because we don't necessarily have a map fixer for every list. And now we've kind of gotten it on our units, which is really interesting. And it's a cool direction where we're bringing a lot of utility in our infantry, which is not something that a lot of other factions do. And so I'm kind of wondering if there was a point that at Privateer Press headquarters, PPHQ, right? PQ, whatever, where they were like, let's do this different thing with Legion infantry and like give them a utility role. Which is really interesting because not a lot. I mean, Cygnar has it to a certain extent, but basically, like, Cygnar is like a utility faction.
I think there are a lot of things that they turned up into the utility. So that brings up another one of my favorite models in Mark III, and that's the Seraph. Like, that sucker just got better. Like, putting flare on his gun, like, yes! I find myself looking at the Seraph going, God, I wish I had more points in this list, because you would be in it just for the sake of being amazing. For your point cost, for your gun, for your animus, for your flare, like, everything is good on it. And it's a support beast that does work. Like, it's a rare package in itself.
Well, and with it having apparition now, so that it can kind of unjam itself, where they really did kind of round out that piece a bit. And I think that was really interesting because a lot of time we're like, well, Slipstream is good, but is it 14 points good?
Yes, right? We've had that discussion.
But when you get to Slipstream and then flare the target as well, that kind of like double stacks, it's a threat extender and an accuracy buff, potentially. So now, mind you, it has also been a very interesting game where I feel like I used to just spend every single Fury that I could. And that is just not the world we live in anymore.
Mm-mm.
And so being mindful of your Fury expenditures is very different than it was. And so it's been very interesting, like keeping an eye on that and trying not to go overboard. And that's where some of these map fixers and stuff help. That's almost better Fury management than Forsakens. It's just like try to make it so I don't have to boost.
Yeah.
But
Well, and we've talked about the Fury efficiencies of Nerfs a bunch, but I do think that kind of working around Fury efficient beasts is also a good way to not have to spend points on as much Fury management.
yeah. And it's interesting now, kind of like how rarely we have to force to charge, right? Did you ever think that we were running Sorceress on Hellion as much as we do now?
Do you remember how much I liked the Sorceress in Hellion Mark II? Because I liked it a whole lot. But I think that it's just in the current meta with all the things that it brings and it being able to be free in a tier for all the amazing, it's just, I like it a lot. I think, yes, I need to get a second one.
Yeah, it's definitely a good model, and I've liked what it brings, especially as a free model. You can't really complain that much about it.
Yeah, definitely.
But I was happy that I'd purchased two for like the Bethane Theme Force, like way back
Way
in the
back
day.
in the day.
And I played it a little bit, and I played it in the Veil 2 Theme Force a couple of times too. Like I liked what it brought. And I still think there is more annoying game. Like if you're gonna play oracles, like I want to play the Sorcerers on Hellion with occultation casters. Good God, does that model get annoying when you can't shoot it like at all?
Mm-hmm. I really like it with Thag's one because he can give it concealment, and if you're running a Blightbringer +2 armor, and it's just like, can you deal with this model?
Oh yeah, I was playing it with like double Blightbringer list. I'm like, it's got concealment and it's got +2 armor. Like I hate you.
Yep.
But man, it's been a really interesting week of trying to keep all of this stuff in mind and just how many different lists there are to think about, not just
Yeah.
in like the lists that are potentially playable, but in the list you have to potentially play against. And so now prepping for the first potential tournaments like ATC and Las Vegas Open, there's just a lot to keep in mind.
You see this face? That's the smiley face. That's because I bought my LVO passes today, and just hearing you say the words gets me excited for what's to come.
Las Vegas Open, baby.
Oh God, Las Vegas Open, yes.
A little ASMR.
What a great time. I mean, we've had some good LVOs, and I'm super excited for the next one. I'm not gonna lie, this one's gonna be the best.
I am definitely excited to go back. It's interesting for me because I had fallen in love with TempleCon in a huge way, and that was like my favorite convention of the year. And then like after like the second year of LVO, TempleCon got moved to totally different dates. I'm like, well, that frees everything up. And then Captain Con's like, we'll move into that slot for the East Coast. And I'm like, oh, but now the community's split between West and East. It's like Biggie and Tupac all over again.
It's probably better for the convention scene to be able to have sharks go to a couple different metas at once, though, so that way more players can get raised up rather than because I mean, some of the events back in the day, the Shark Tank would be so heavy because it was like the one con for the next 4 months, and everybody's gonna be there, and you're like, well, this is gonna be tough. And now you're like, hey, some guys are actually gonna stay over there.
Man, the Shark Tanks are the best place to swim, though.
I don't disagree. No. Coming.
What? Can you do that sound effect again?
Na.
All right. Well, I think this is the stuff that we wanted to hit on in this particular episode. Just kind of like rehash things for a moment. One of the important things to keep in mind when you're playing your list is, are you making your opponent worry about an assassination run? And if you feel like you're going into the turn and they just feel completely safe and they are playing a more aggressive caster like Denny 1 or Kruger 2, something that's got to come forward and catch stuff in their feet, you might want to play something a little bit more aggressive or start looking at the list design in such a ways where you can scare them. One of the things that I would think about, especially against Denny 1, be like, well, if someone's going to catch my caster in the feet, I want my Ravagores to be able to aim and shoot their caster. And sometimes you got to think about, well, if Kruger TKs himself backwards, am I still going to be able to aim and shoot him? And obviously that gets a lot more complicated with him and TK and pushing, and it's hard to calculate that stuff. But sometimes you just got to try, and you have to threaten people, and you have to keep that stuff in check. Because again, this comes down to my whole strategy against Haley 2 and Mark 2, and people are like, this is a bullshit caster to play against. So I was like, well, just fucking kill her. And then she'll stop spending so much focus the next time. And then you've got a game. If they spend all their focus, then maybe you do roll for it.
There's an old chess adage that basically it's you have to make your opponent work for it.
For sure. And then also, like, even if you're losing a game, you may want to like find interesting ways to threaten that assassination and wait for the right moment to do it. Now, if you're losing on scenario, you may only have one shot, so you might as well just go for it. But these are all the things to keep in mind. So to all the listeners that have tuned in, we didn't get a lot of questions this episode, but that's totally fine. We're happy that you guys are listening. We're looking at more ways to bring you guys video content and games. We've got so much stuff planned for Blight Makes Right, because we really, really do love you guys. The Legion community is the best. And so we are definitely looking at more ways to hit you guys with cool content, and we're gonna have that stuff coming pretty soon. There's been some developments on both the California side and the Washington side, as far as I'm concerned.
A lot of exciting things to come, and I will hopefully be broadcasting a couple live games Sunday on my Twitch feed from Field of Fire. It's going to be Crucible Guard versus Legion and Crucible Guard versus Scorn. So come check it out.
Cool. All right, listeners, that's going to wrap up episode 4 of Blight Makes Right, and we'll see you guys next week.
Take care. Have fun.
Blight out!